Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this licensing subcommittee hearing of the 26th of April 2024. This hearing is convened to consider an application for a new premises licence in respect of the Marquis Suffolk Upper Street in Layham. All parties here are registered to speak and have a right to make their representations under the hearing regulations. The procedure will be fairly simple. Once we get into the hearing proper, we will have an agenda to follow, so there will be some formal procedures to follow. Then we'll go into the hearing proper. The licensing officer will give an outline of the application, and then there may be an opportunity for questions if there's any clarification needed. That will be followed by the applicant submitting their application to the subcommittee. Again, there may be an opportunity for questions, but at this point it's just questions for clarification on anything that's been said. And then each of the persons registered to make representations will also be given a time to make their representations to the subcommittee. Again, there may be questions following that. Once the subcommittee have asked all the questions they need and have heard all they need, could you just wait a moment, please?
Do you think that the sound could be put up a little bit, because my colleague
Okay. It should be coming through the speakers. I don't know if that can be helped.
We'll just make sure that everybody speaks clearly.
I'll speak a bit louder. Okay, right. So then you'll have an opportunity to make your representations. Then following that, once the members have asked all the questions they need to, there'll be a quick summing up from the licensing officer if needed, and then the applicant will make closing submissions. Members of the public, the applicant, licensing officers will be asked to leave the meeting then while the subcommittee make their decision, and you'll all be called back as quickly as possible for the announcement of that decision. So, moving on to the second item on the agenda is the election of chair. Councillor Lee Parker is the chair of the full Licensing and Regulatory Committee, so he will be taking this subcommittee this morning. So I'll hand over to you, Councillor Parker.
Super job. Thank you very much, Mr. Deleu. Good morning and welcome everybody to the meeting this morning. I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live to YouTube and will be capable of repeated viewing. The meeting will be recorded except where there are confidential or exempt items. If you make a representation to the meeting, you will be deemed by the Council to have consented to being recorded. By entering this meeting as a speaker, you are also consenting to being recorded by the Council and to the possible use of those sound recordings for webcasting and/or training purposes. The Council, members of the public and the press may record, film or photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and the press are not lawfully excluded. Can I first of all remind you of some domestic arrangements? You'll be invited to speak and ask questions by the chair. Please do not interrupt other speakers. Please switch off all mobile phones or turn them to silent. Facilities, if required, are situated outside of the meeting room, and water is available outside of the meeting room also. Should the fire alarm sound, please leave the building immediately via a fire exit and make your way to the assembly point, which is Ipswich Town Football Ground. Do not enter the atrium, the ground floor area and the walkways. If you are in the atrium at the time of the alarm, follow the signs to the nearest exit. Use the stairs, not the lifts, and do not re-enter the building until told it is safe to do so. So moving on, item number 3 on the agenda, apologies for absence.
None received, Chair.
Thank you. Item number 4, declaration of interest by councillors. Councillors, do you have any interests to declare?
No.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I'm going to do a quick round of introductions for everybody this morning so we know who everybody is. Starting with myself, I'm Councillor Lee Parker. I'll be chairing the meeting this morning as we've already established. And if I can ask my co-subcommittee members please to introduce yourselves.
Morning, I'm Lee Jamieson, Councillor and Vice Chair of Licensing.
Good morning, Councillor Alison Owen.
Thank you very much, councillors. And we have a number of officers in attendance this morning. Mr. Deleu has already introduced himself this morning, our legal advisor. Could I ask our officers to introduce yourselves, please?
Yes, Chair. My name is Kay Sanders, Licensing Officer.
Good morning, Kate Pearsall, Licensing Team Leader.
Thank you very much. Karen, please.
Karen Sayer, Governance Officer.
Thank you very much. And we also have in attendance with us our governance officers, Bethany Webb, who is operating all of the technology this morning, and Henriette is with us as well. Thank you very much. Okay, so I'm now going to ask each of you to introduce yourselves one by one. I'll start with yourself, Mr. O'Leary, if I can. Could you just introduce yourself and your capacity here, please?
My name's Stephen O'Leary. I'm the owner of the Marquis of Cornwallis.
Thank you very much. That's great. And can I ask you, Mr. O'Leary, to confirm that you have read receipt of the procedure, the report, and the copies of the relevant notice?
That's correct.
Thank you very much indeed. I don't think we've got any responsible authorities here this morning, have we? No? Okay, that's fine. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, I'm now going to ask you to introduce yourselves in turn, if that's okay. Starting with you, sir, please.
My name is Richard Craphill, House Farm in Layham. I made representation 11.
Thank you very much.
Annie Jarvis, I live opposite the Marquis at Butterfly Hall.
Thank you.
I'm Derek Moles. I live in Mill Lane in
Thank you,
Upper
Mr.
Lane.
Moles.
Hello, I'm Robert Keeble. I live at the Red Cottage opposite the Marquis.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Keeble. Thank you.
Peggy Hogston, adjacent to the Marquis.
Thank you, Ms. Hogston.
Hi, I'm Mark Stevens. I live at Holly Lodge, opposite the Marquis. My wife, not mic'd up, is also here, Beverly Stevens.
Thank you very much indeed. That's great. And I need to ask if anybody sat on the bench here would like to appoint a spokesperson to put forward their views. Okay. That's grand. And I also need to ask whether any party to the hearing wishes to withdraw either their application or their representation at this point. I presume not. Excellent. Okay. So if I can just quickly ask of the licensing officer, have there been any requests from the parties for permission to call witnesses?
No, Chair.
Thank you. Have any of the parties indicated that they wish to present documentary or other material?
No, Chair.
Excellent. Okay, that's grand. Thank you. Mr. O'Leary, could I ask you, sir, could you give me an estimate, best estimate of the time that you require to present your case and ask questions of other parties to the hearing?
I would have thought 5 minutes would suffice.
5 minutes? Yep. Okay, thank you very much indeed. And similarly, to each of the representatives here.
I think 5 minutes would be masses for me.
Okay, that's grand.
2 minutes.
Thank you.
5 minutes.
Okay,
Yeah, 5 minutes. Thank you.
wonderful.
2 or 3 minutes, I should think.
Excellent.
Yeah, I should think about the same. 2 to 3 minutes.
Wonderful. Thank you very much indeed. That's fantastic. In which case then, we will move to the substantive item, the hearing itself, and I'm going to ask our licensing officer to present the report BLSC/23/2 and to summarise the matter under consideration. Kerry, please.
Thank you, Chair. This hearing is to determine an application made for the grant of a new premises licence made under Section 17 of the Licensing Act 2003 by the Marquis of Cornwallis Limited in relation to the premises Marquis, Suffolk, Upper Street, Layham, Ipswich, Suffolk, IP7 5JZ. The application was received by the Licensing Authority on the 4th of March 2024 and then amended by mediation, and a copy of this is attached to this report as Appendix A. Full details of the proposed activity and timings are contained within the application form attached as Appendix A, alongside the steps proposed by the applicant in the operating schedule, Part M, and additional conditions agreed through mediation between the applicant, police and Babergh District Council Environmental Protection Team to promote the licensing objectives, and this is attached at Appendix B. The original application that was applied for, which was seen by members of the public, has been sent to the councillors separately. The application made has been subject to the statutory consultation period as prescribed by regulation. The notices advertising the application have been on display at the premises and published in the Ipswich Star on the 11th of March 2024 edition. Please note that an error was made on page 7 of the report, which stated this was advertised on the 26th of October 23, not the 11th of March 2024. Full details of the proposed activities and timings are contained within the application form attached as Appendix A to this report. A hearing is necessary to determine the application following receipt of representations which have not been withdrawn. The subcommittee will be aware that its consideration is confined to promotion of the 4 licensing objectives, and the need or commercial demand for licensed premises are not considerations for the licensing authority when discharging its licensing functions, as outlined by the Secretary of State at paragraph 14.19 of the guidance issued under Section 182 of the Licensing Act 2003. In carrying out its licensing functions, the licensing authority must have regard to its statement of licensing policy, published under Section 5 of the Act, and any guidance issued by the Secretary of State under Section 182. The licensing authority must carry out its functions under the Act with a view to promoting the licensing objectives, which are A, the prevention of crime and disorder, B, public safety, C, the prevention of public nuisance, and D, the protection of children from harm. Where revisions are made to the legislation or guidance issued by the Secretary of State, there may be a period of time when the local statement of licensing policy is inconsistent with these revisions. In these circumstances, the licensing authority will have regard and give appropriate weight to the relevant changes, guidance, and its own statement of licensing policy. The subcommittee will also be aware of Human Rights Act 1988 considerations, specifically Article 6 for the applicant and Articles 8 and 1 of Protocol 1 for those raising representations, when determining applications for the grant of a new licence. The Licensing Authority has received no representations from responsible authorities under the Licensing Act 2003. There has been 13 representations received made by other persons, which includes local residents. This is attached as Appendix D to this report. The subcommittee must, having regard to the representations made, take such of the steps, if any, as it considers appropriate for the promotion of the licensing objectives. To grant the licence subject to conditions which are consistent with the operating schedule accompanying the application, modified to such extent as the authority considers appropriate for promotion of the licensing objectives, and subject to any mandatory conditions which must be included in the licence. To exclude from the scope of the licence any of the licensable activities to which the application relates, to refuse to specify a person in the licence as premises supervisor, or to reject the application. For these purposes, conditions of the licence are modified if any of them are altered or omitted or any new condition is added. Any party aggrieved by the decision taken by the licensing authority in respect of this application has a statutory right of appeal to the Magistrates' Court. This concludes my report.
Thank you very much indeed, Kerry. Okay, so I'm obliged to ask if any of the parties, either the applicant or the person, notwithstanding the fact that you're each going to get an opportunity to make your own representations, but to the applicant first, do you have any specific questions to the licensing officer at this time?
No, sir.
Excellent, thank you very much indeed. And again, to each of the applicants.
None from me.
No.
None from me.
Thank you.
I just have one query in respect to the process, more for education. I don't think it really impacts things, but there was a change made to the hours approximately 5 days before the due date for for submissions, and that didn't seem to reset the clock. So the same 31st of March remained as the due date for submissions. Is that normal? Is that okay, that situation?
Yes, it is. So because it was a reduction in hours, this consultation period remains the same. If there was any change in an increase of hours, then we would have to restart the period.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Super. Thank you very much indeed. Okay. Members, do you at this stage have any specific questions for the licensing officer?
Not at this stage, no.
No, not at this stage.
Super, thank you. In which case, Mr. O'Leary, I'm going to ask you now to present your case in your own time, sir, please.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to clarify first of all what we're asking for, so that the people that have objected do understand where we are. So we had a planning application accepted, and as far as I'm aware, we haven't gone outside of that planning application and the agreements that we had. So effectively, what we're asking for is music inside of the premises up until 11:59, and for a licence on those premises till 11:59. And when I go through the objections, there seems to be some issues in there that shouldn't be relative to today, because we're not asking for music outside. We're not asking to go past those periods of time in this specific application, albeit I think the only exception is New Year's Eve, where we had a licence till 3 o'clock in the morning, and we reduced that till 2 o'clock in the morning because we haven't needed it, and we've done 7 New Year's Eves. Some of the other objections are, I've got one that's relative to the fact that we're still cooking and that the smells are going through to the village. We actually changed the extraction process in the kitchen in 2020, and as far as I'm concerned, I've not heard anything else from there. The objections about the increased noise and traffic, I've done a massive amount of work on who our customers are and what directions they're coming from, and the extension, which includes where the new licence is for. We have moved the car park away from the village, and with the parish council have actually moved the village sign further away from the village, and I would say that should actually reduce the speed in which traffic is coming into the village, or should do, because I can't do anything about people. What I can do is stick a sign out, and hopefully they'll take notice of that. We've increased the size of the car park so that it's far easier to manoeuvre in that car park, and as far as I'm concerned, and the information I have, is that 70% of the traffic comes from the A12 and doesn't actually go through the village. Anything that then does turn through the village is actually going to be changing gear and moving up their speed levels prior to getting into the village. So to me, we've actually improved the situation by what we're doing and not made it worse. When we designed the wedding venue, we have spent a lot of time with KLH in trying to reduce noise pollution and light pollution, and to that we have made sure there is no exit of noise from the wedding venue out into the village. And that means that effectively we've created an air-conditioned building with light pollution shutters that let light into the building but reduce light out of the building at a height above 2.5 metres, effectively then reducing what goes out into the valley. So technically, we haven't got an exit to the north side of the wedding venue, and so therefore we should reduce the noise pollution from that area. The south-facing side, we're not asking for music outside at this current moment in time, because we haven't got the flora and fauna in there to show everybody what we would do. So we haven't applied for that, and that's been taken off, and that was one of the reasons why things have changed. When we look at what we're going to do and what we're trying to do, we have a business that is not commercially viable. And so I took the decision 4 years ago to turn this from a boutique hotel into a boutique hotel with an extra 4 rooms, a wedding venue and a spa. The spa is underground, it is enclosed, so that is the part of this project that will be 7 days a week. But it's restricted to 12 people per half a day. So the traffic there is irrelevant. You know, there's far more traffic going past my place into Hadley and everywhere else than there will be coming into it. The idea of the wedding venue is not to be busy fools. We have created something that's cost in excess of 10 million, and that is to sell weddings to people at a level. This is not a Witherspoons. We don't have drinkers. You know, we have been open for 7 years. I have never had a conversation with the police about noise or nuisance. I have never spoken to a fire officer. I have never had environmental health talk to me except for the issue of smells from the kitchen, which we dealt with in 2020, and I have not received a complaint about that since. If I look through the whole project, this is about creating a very stylish wedding venue. It is not about having weddings 7 days a week. It's about having a wedding maybe on a Thursday or Friday with a discount from a value of 50,000 and then having bigger weddings on a Saturday. Now, we are not going to be able to have a wedding on a Sunday because if our clients have hired the whole premises, they will hire it from Friday through to Sunday or at least Saturday into Sunday. So we're incapable of doing a wedding on a Saturday or a Sunday. And if I was lucky enough to get 3 weddings a week, then I will be satisfied. You know, it's not about creating an environment of doing cheap things, and so it's not what we're about. So this issue of having weddings 365 days a year has never even been our budgets to our banks or anything else. So it's just completely irrelevant. And we do not have people walking from Hadley, getting drunk in the Marquis and then walking back. So it doesn't happen, and it hasn't happened. The proof that it hasn't happened is I don't know anybody that has ever complained to me about aggressive or unruly behaviour. It just doesn't happen, and it's not what we're about. So if I look at the complaints that I've got, 70% of them are not relevant to what we're even talking about. I don't know, is there anything else that we need to cover? I think, you know, the traffic issue is something that is 99% of the traffic that comes part of the Marquis has got nothing to do with the Marquis, and it won't have anything to do with the Marquis. And there may be an increase of traffic, and if there isn't, then I've failed because I haven't sold them. But I've done everything I can to move that traffic away from the Marquis. Not all by design. The fact is I couldn't put a car park on a building that exists, but I've moved it further away from the village because it had to be there, and then taken advantage of all the information that Sharps, Redmore, KLH, Babergh District Council have given me, and as far as I'm aware, I have no objections from the Parish Council, I have no objections from the police, I have no objections from the fire authorities, and we've adhered to everything that Sharp Redmore have asked us to do. As far as I'm concerned, there is nothing else I can do. I am not here to do weddings 365 days a year. I don't even know of people that are far more successful than me that can achieve that objective, so it's an irrelevance. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr O'Leary, for your time. So I'm now going to give everybody an opportunity to ask any questions as a result of Mr O'Leary's presentation there. But they must be questions, not statements. So if anybody's got any questions, because of course everybody will have an opportunity to make the representation and answer questions themselves. So for now, does anybody have any questions amongst the speakers or presenters here? Right, okay, hands everywhere. Shall we go in turn? Could I ask you just to reintroduce yourself as well? Thank you.
I'm Sally Jervis. I live at Butterfly Hall opposite the Marquis.
Thank you, Mr.
Mr O'Leary, I think that's an interesting point that you bring up about the traffic. So are you suggesting that people that live in Hadley or Monks Ely or in that direction at all would have to go the other way out of Layham to go onto the A12 to get back home? Are you saying that there would be no traffic going through Upper Layham? Because, of course, I believe you have a premises in Hadley which you're going to use as an overspill anyway for parties and weddings. So I presume that
we must stick with what's before us.
Sorry?
We must stick with what's before us,
Okay,
the application that's before us.
But I'm trying to back up my question, basically. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Mr. O'Leary.
Okay. What I actually said was that I went through the bookings that we have on our system, and we tried to answer the questions about traffic. And what I said was that, as far as we can tell, 70% of the traffic that we receive comes from the A12 and 30% comes from the Hadley area. Why those percentages should change is beyond me. Obviously there will be an increase of traffic from Hadley, but it's not 100% of the increase of traffic to the Marquis. If I'm right, the increase of traffic should be on the same percentages. And I will just answer the question. What we have done is we have turned Barclays Bank into a 7-bedroom ensuite house, which will be rooms that will be booked for weddings. And what we will do is we will ferry those people from Barclays, which is now Mark Cornwallis House, to and from those premises. Because we will either take them to or from, because if they're at an event, it'll either be us and or a taxi firm taking them back.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Mr. O'Leary. So, who else would like to ask a question? Yes, sir.
Yeah, can I ask a question about the planning approval and this licensing application? Because I did read the acoustic report that you referred to, and for some reason I thought that 23:30 was the limit of activity, and the winding down period would therefore be, in my mind, until about midnight.
Can I just come in
clarify?
here?
Yeah, of course.
I just want to clarify that the licensing regime, we're the licensing authority, and
Yes.
the planning authority are actually two separate entities.
Yes.
Now, the planning authority will determine their decision on an application on certain criteria which they have to apply. The licensing authority are only concerned with the licensing objectives, so they may come to a different decision. Now, that doesn't mean to say that they don't have to comply with the planning.
It's just that I'm confused about what that decision was, because it does have a bearing on
Well, and unless the applicant can actually clarify now with that information, it's not information
the
that we
applicant
would
brought
have.
it up by saying that he followed, as far as he knew, all the various conditions within the, or the various offers that were made within that acoustic report.
That's fine, but even so, the licensing authority are only concerned with the licensing objectives, so they're not required to comply with what the planning authority have already decided. Okay.
What can you say?
Is that clear?
In the documentation that you've sent me,
Yeah.
it says that the earlier time should be complied with by the premises. Otherwise,
Yes,
they're liable to a planning.
And that would be a planning issue,
I see.
not a licensing issue. So it's a separate track, and there may be some
Mr.
frustration.
O'Leary made an incorrect statement in saying that he brought forward the planning approval, which has nothing to do with the licensing authority. Is that what you're saying?
No, I think what Mr. O'Leary said was that he's actually brought his licensing application in line what's been granted with the planning application. Now, that may be true, but
Well, it may not be
that
true.
isn't a necessary consideration for the licensing authority.
Okay, I understand.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Yes, sir.
So I will labour the point that Mr. O'Leary did indeed say that they adhere, the application adheres to the Sharp's Redmore report, but the Sharp's Redmore report definitely refers to 23:30. So that's just want to make sure that he is aware of that, and that the 2330 is what appears in the Sharps-Redmore report.
So should we just get clarity of that, of that situation?
So the Sharps-Redmore.
Could I ask you to introduce yourself, sir, as well?
Will Ludkin, KLH Architects. Will Ludkin, KLH Architects. So the Sharps-Redmore report was developed in the original planning application, which has undertaken various iterations throughout its development, which we're aware of. The consideration is that the music is proposed to finish at 23:30. However, if we go back to the planning permission, the planning permission actually states, in terms of the noise mitigation plan, is that the plan shall ensure that prior to 2300, the maximum music noise level at the nearest noise sensitive premises does not exceed that level, and can continue until, and this is not verbatim, but we're aware of the condition that's quoted in one of the objections, this can continue to 2300 to 2359, which forms the notice of approval.
Okay, so if I can just clarify to the members that that is not really a consideration for you. You're considering the licensing objectives and whether they are being upheld.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed, Mr. Liu. And is this a secondary question, sir?
Well, it's a follow-on from that, which is that reference was made to one part of the recommendations of the plan, of the planning committee. Another was that the noise management plan should be developed in accordance with the recommendations of Sharps-Redmore, which reference 2330. So I'm just, for factual sort of correctness, I just want to put that out.
Okay, all right, point taken. Any other questions at all at this stage? Nope, okay, wonderful. In which case then, I'm now going to ask my colleagues on the subcommittee if you have any questions for Mr. O'Leary at this point.
Just a couple.
Yep, please, Councillor Jameson.
Thank you. What number of guests do you think your premises, or do you know your premises is going to be able to cope with for a wedding, firstly?
So the wedding venue will take 140 and the premises is 220. And that's on the fire assessment.
Sorry, I missed that last bit.
So it's 120 for 140 for weddings and 220 for the premises. And that's on the fire assessment.
Okay. So one of the key things, I think, for the residents is when people leave, there's going to be lots of cars starting up at the same time, car doors banging, people talking. Now, you mentioned in Appendix B that you're that's going to be adequately managed by staff on duty. I just wondered if you could expand on how they're going to keep that noise to a minimum.
I think my best answer for you is that on a Mother's Day, no, I'll go away from that because that's during the day. On a Saturday evening, our capacity is about 150 at the moment, and we do not have a noise problem issue. The kind of customers that we receive are not Witherspoons and they're not people getting blatantly drunk and abusing other people's personal space. We have at this present moment in time 64 employees, Last month we had 64 employees. This month we have 84. When the premises open, it will be in excess of 90. We have receptionists, doormen, night porters, night cleaners, general managers, operations managers, and senior supervisors. And it is not acceptable to me to upset the people that I live in and around. So if there was an increase of unacceptable behaviour, I will be the first person to deal with it.
Yeah, obviously unacceptable behaviour is a thing, but obviously just people leaving a venue, talking, saying their goodbyes and slamming door is going to be a noise. And it does say you're going to manage that. I just wondered, going to be managed by staff to keep that, keep that noise down a little bit. I wonder how you're going to...
I mean, there's two answers to that. We have spent a lot of time and effort in making sure that the building and the process of leaving that building and moving the car park away from the village, and then the hundreds of thousands of pounds that we're spending in vegetation and plants and trees and shrubs. It's all about managing the noise and light pollution and creating a fantastic environment, and we're not going to spoil that. So yeah, I mean, the whole process is about doing it right and making it right, and using Sharp's Redmore to make sure that our decibels are not reached. I think we've just paid £4,000 for a machine that we have to lock away and make sure that our noise is at an acceptable level. So, I have absolutely every faith in my staff and the amount of staff that I have to police the exit of the building.
Thank you, Councillor Chairman. Councillor Owen.
Thanks, Lee. You took a couple of my questions. But just how long does it take you to exit the buildings? Because obviously, if it's 11:59, everything's finishing. How long does it take you to get everyone out, and then we have a bit of a quiet?
I can only guess, because obviously we're not operational. But the new entrance is parallel to the car park, and the car park is further away from the building. How long's a piece of string? From my point of view, I think one of the things that I spoke to the parish council about to alleviate the issue of drinking and so on and so forth, and the reduction in hours was about it's not profitable for us to keep people on the premises after we've started selling products. So we need those people to leave as soon as possible. So my suggestion would be that we will endeavour to have the place cleared away within half an hour.
Thank you very much, councillors. Okay, so no further questions at this stage from Mr. O'Leary. Okay, in which case, please.
Just a quick question, and just for to help with context for the members, can you describe the changes to the premises? Because it was previously licensed as a public house. Can you just give them some idea of what's changed or what's going to change?
Okay, so effectively, and funnily enough, for the last 2.5 years, people have been exiting the car park, walking 20 metres along the roadside and into the front door of the building. Okay, we have now built a wedding venue with a new lounge area, a new reception area, so that when you enter the premises coming from the A12 or from Hadley, you turn into our car park, you drop down slightly away from the road, and then behind you you've now got shrubbery against the road. So effectively all of those things should be reducing any noise pollution and certainly light pollution. You then exit your car, you then walk or continue to walk through the car park and then into our brand new front doors, which by the way are double doors, because before we had a problem with draft, so we've actually put in 2 double doors which are about 4 metres apart from each other, so you can enter the first electric door, be in the room and then go through the second electric door. That then brings you into the new reception area, and then obviously you'll be either going through to the restaurant and or turn left and go into the wedding venue. So effectively, my thoughts would be that the noise that we create now will be less of a public nuisance than the noise we did create by constantly walking along the footpath a good 20 metres and into the building, and then obviously on leaving after maybe drinking and creating a bit more noise, you won't be doing that anymore. You'll be coming out of the new reception area, which is lower than the road level. I mean, the new reception area is probably 2 metres lower than the main road, isn't it?
About 3.
Yeah, about 3 metres lower. And then you're walking straight to the car park without going up towards the road. Then obviously you exit that car park either going left or right, but that new car park entrance is probably 50, 60 metres further along and away from the village.
Excellent. That's grand. Thank you very much. And if I can just ask, just so that I'm, for clarification, just so I'm absolutely aware, when are you hoping that this will be in full swing operation, as it were?
Our first event is on the 7th of June, which we are going to use. It's a breakfast event, which is we're going to use that to test all the kitchen facilities, fire and so on and so forth. Our openings are on the 4th and 5th of July. Our first wedding is on the 19th of July.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you very much indeed. Okay. Members, any questions subsequent to that at all? No. Okay. Licensing officer, do you have any questions or points of clarification?
No, Chair.
Okay. In which case, we will... let's just have a little look-see on here. No, that's absolutely fine. In which case, we will come on to everybody that's before us who wishes to speak. So, same format. You'll be asked to give your presentation. At the end of that, we'll ask if anybody has any questions for you. We'll start at this end. So.
Thank you. Just to remind you, my name is Richard Cranfield, and I wrote Representation 11. So the heart of this application, tomorrow, I think, is a 30-minute extension from 11:29 to 11:59, which doesn't sound very much, but of course, as Steve has said, you know, they could be up to 140 guests plus capacity up to 220, staff of another 90. So there's a lot of people leaving at the end of the evening, and it's very late. The application is for 365 days a year. Steve says, obviously we can't do 365 weddings, I understand that, but the application is for 365 days a year. And so that, I think, is what is in front of the committee. I think that the Marquis, and I've been shown around it by Steve, is been very well built. But for me, the issue is people leaving. Because it's a party venue, and people have gone there to have a party, celebrate a wedding. These events, in my experience, tend to go on for a long time. You know, they start with a service in the afternoon, perhaps at 2 o'clock, followed by a reception, drinks reception, followed by a meal, speeches, and then dancing, and the rest of it. So these are long-term events, or, you know, a long day, and it seems to me that you can organise that event so it ends at 11:30 without destroying the commercial enterprise which Steve has got there. And I think in terms of licensing issues, as people leave a party at the end of an event like that, they will be noisy, they will have had a good time, and that's all fine, but that does mean there will be extra noise and disturbance late at night, which will affect people in the village. The car park has been moved, actually it's been moved towards us as it happens. The car park is very open on a westward facing slope, and so light and noise does go from it, and we're affected by that. So there will be an increase in noise and disturbance. There will be inevitably an increase of risk of crime and disorder, because the truth is, as people exit parties, kind of things can kick off in a car park. Now, Steve says he's not Wetherspoons, and he's certainly not. I get that, but he doesn't really know what each party is going to be like. Of course, you know, once it's happened, and that party is not going to come back for another wedding. So you can't really pre-check the nature of the people who are going to be there. And there will be, I think, from that, public safety and nuisance issues. And it affects the residents and the village. So I think that it does impact 3 of those 4 key licensing criteria. In, I think, a substantially negative way because of the size of the venue and the fact it's a 365-day-a-year event. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Cranfield. So on the same basis as before, does anybody have any questions for Mr. Cranfield? And they must be questions rather than statements.
May I speak?
Could you, yes.
Sorry,
I mean,
my
yes,
name is Emma Thomas-Lambert. I'm one of the directors of business. The reason we have to go for 365 days a year is purely because when you're offering someone a wedding, you cannot dictate the day that they want to get married. You know, people might want to get married on a Tuesday, they might want to get married on a Friday, they might be of a certain culture that has to get married because it's the certain time of a, you know, they have a moon phase or whatever. There's quite a lot of considerations for that. If that was possible, we would have considered that. You know, I've personally come from a large venue myself. I was the general manager of an exclusive use venue of really high-end weddings, which is exactly what we're doing here. Weddings are going to be very high value, and I can personally say in those 500 plus weddings,
right,
I've never had any trouble.
Okay.
That's not. Yeah.
Okay, so that's a statement to clarify.
Oh,
the
okay.
situation.
Sorry, I thought it was a question.
No, that's fine,
Apologies.
But we
Okay.
really need questions.
Okay, sorry. The
The
question that he was saying is, in answer to the question,
Right.
is the 365 days a year statement is not because we're going to do them that time.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it is specifically to ask questions on what they've presented. You will have an opportunity at the very end. So if you make note of what's being said, if you want to sum up and address any of those, you can do those before the subcommittee retire. Okay, thank you.
I just asked Richard a question. We've been operating for 7 years, and I know you and your family, and I've never, as far as I'm aware, heard that you've contacted any of my staff to complain about any disorder. Am I correct?
Yes, I mean, absolutely, and we have a good relationship. So I wouldn't contact your staff; I would contact you. There is already quite a lot of light coming out of the car park because it's such an open thing. And I was going to mention that to you actually, and I've got some photographs. But I think that because it's currently operating as a pub, and you haven't had these big events, we just don't know how it's going to pan out. And so I think that you do have a big New Year's Eve party, but you know, we weren't there at New Year's Eve, so you know, we didn't experience it.
Mr. O'Leary, can I ask you to reserve that, because you will get an opportunity to sum up at the end. So, by all means, you'll have an opportunity to address the issue if that's in order. Thank you. Okay, members.
Yeah, just one thing.
Councillor James.
Yeah, I think you sort of started touching on it in the answering Mr. Leary's question, but the pub has got a licence till 12 now, and I just wondered if you could expand on what the disturbance or not disturbances you experience, what kind of disturbance you experience at the moment, or not, none at all from the pub as it is? I know it's going to be a much larger venue, as you say, and much more people, but as it is now, what is it like?
I mean, maybe sad for you to know, but by 12 o'clock I'm in bed. So I'll be asleep by then. I think the experience we have had is of the New Year's Eve parties, which is, there's fireworks, which you might not have every wedding, but there's a lot of people there, and it is noisy. I mean, it's a very open aspect. It's not noisy from what's going on in the pub, it's what you hear from the car park.
Thank you very much. Any questions, Councillor Aaron? No? Okay. And nothing from me. Anything from the licensing officer at all?
No, Chair.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Cranfield, for your representation. If we can move on, please.
I basically, I agree with everything that Mr. Cranfield has just said, but I have some questions that I'm not too sure about. And one of them is basically going back to the point that Mr. O'Leary was saying about his staff seeing to
Mr. Jervis,
we're
asking for your representation rather than questions. We've had an opportunity to question Mr. O'Leary.
Okay. Well, I'm just very worried about the live music outside. I know that recorded music goes on until 9 o'clock, but I believe that live music can go on until 11 o'clock, and I wondered if there was going to be a noise limitator for this. I mean, how noise spreads, particularly outside.
Right. Okay. So these are questions.
There's questions. Yeah, I have questions, which because I agree with everything that Richard Cranfield has just said. I'm also wondering about the supply of alcohol off premises. So, I mean, I believe people can buy alcohol and then sort of take it away after hours, if you see what I mean. That's I'm a little bit concerned about. Basically, yes, going back to sort of the antisocial behaviour that could, with loud noises when people leave a venue. And also, how is staff going to manage to get people at midnight to leave a party where they've probably paid a lot of money quietly, and it's not really the staff's job, is it, to chaperone them to their cars and make sure they leave quietly. Also, I'm wondering about the noise of bins as well, because bottles currently are thrown in, are emptied by 9 o'clock. I believe, reading this through, it's now 11 o'clock, which is quite a loud, startling noise. And because I live bang opposite, there's, families all the way around with children. I have young people living in my house. We have to get up first thing every morning and go to work. That I find that this is going to be a massive impact on mental and physical well-being, and I think this can't be taken lightly. Also to say, I just wanted to add that we have always been supporting the Marquis, but I think now this is a big game changer, because if there are going to be 220 guests at any time, plus the 90 employees, there is going to be an awful lot more noise. And I would be very, very surprised that people would even be able to leave by 1 o'clock, that mass of people, when they've been drinking. That's it.
Super. Thank you very much, Mr. I mean, and indeed, I think Councillor Jameson has already asked a question with regards to people leaving the premises and things. But is there anything that we need to clarify for Mrs. Jeffers?
Yes, just to clarify with the live music application. The application as it stands is for indoors only. However, there is a certain permission, or is a deregulated provision for live music and recorded music for premises that are licensed to sell alcohol, in that you are permitted, with certain restrictions, to have live music up to 11 o'clock. That doesn't fall under the licensing regime as it stands at the moment. However, it will also fall under the council's jurisdiction in respect of statutory nuisances and things like that. So there may be issues. If there is a noise issue caused by that, then the environmental service may be involved. However, as it stands at the moment, there's no restriction on live or recorded music between 8 a.m. and 11 p.m. But the application itself is for the indoor music only.
Yes, Karen, point of clarification.
Sorry, Chair. I'd just like to clarify a couple of points that the lady made. On Appendix B, the conditions that were proposed by the applicant, they have stated that customer arrival dispersal shall be adequately managed by staff on duty. That's a condition that the applicant put in, and they will need to do that because that's a condition on their licence. Also, with regards to collections of waste, recycling materials, etc., this was agreed with the Environmental Protection Officer and the applicant that no collections of waste or recycling materials, including bottles, from the premises shall take place between 6 o'clock at night and 8 o'clock on the following day. Just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. Thank you. Excellent. Right. Okay. Do we have any questions then, in that case, for the last speaker? Councillors?
No, I think she's answered them all.
Yeah.
Excellent. Right. Okay. In which case, we'll move on, sir, to the next speaker. Could I just ask you just to reintroduce yourself, sir, please?
Derek Moles. Okay. I'm speaking here today really to express my strong opposition to the licence application submitted by the Marquess of Cornwallis for live music and alcohol service until 12 a.m. in our small rural village. As a resident of the community for over 20 years, I am deeply concerned about the potential negative impact such as the licence will bring to a very peaceful, close-knit village. Our village is characterised by its peace and tranquility and rural charm, qualities that make it a desirable place to live in, the reason why I moved there. Allowing live music and alcohol service 7 days a week until the early hours of the morning threatens to disrupt this peaceful atmosphere and disrupt the residents' lives that we call Layham our home. Furthermore, the extension hours of alcohol servicing can raise significant concerns regarding noise pollution, public safety, and the potential of increased substance of antisocial behaviour. Given the limited resources available already with our rural areas, it would be a challenge for the local authority to adequately address any issues that may arise as a result of this proposed licence. I strongly believe that granting this licence would not only detract from the quality of life for residents, both physical and mental, and undermine the unique character of our village. As such, I urge the licence to be rejected. As a footnote, I've also spoken to a few friends of mine. One is to do with actually housing, and he believes it will also devalue the houses in Layham. And he's checked on this. So he's basically saying is that if this does go ahead, then your house is going to be worth a lot less. He said, because who in their right mind, if you're selling it and you do want to move out of the village and you try and sell it and you say, and they like the house, but you also have to be honest and say, but by the way, just up the road, there's a venue which is going to have music and be from 8 o'clock in the morning to 12 o'clock at night. Who in their right mind is going to buy your house? I know this is already on people's minds because I walk around the village and I've spoken to quite a few people, and I know that's on their mind is, shall we move? Is this time to move? And then they've said exactly the same thing, but if I do try and move and I speak to people and I have to be honest, then you have to say about the Marquess. So we're in a catch-22. Thank you for listening.
You're welcome. Thank you very much for your presentation, sir, as well. So, usual format. We're used to the drill now. Has anybody got any questions for the last speaker at all? Councillor Jameson.
It's probably the same question to everyone who's put representations in. Is it because the pub has been going there for a few years, it's got a licence till midnight, it's the size of the venue that's causing the issue rather than the late hours drinking? Is that true? Is that, would you say?
I think it's a lot later hours, but it's also the volume of people. As it says, you're talking 220 people here. As people have said so many times, is trying to move people around, the noise of just getting into cars, doors banging, and so on. And this is what we're worried about. We know it's going to happen because before all the work started at the Marquis, there was events. There was events going on at the Marquis. We know that because we've laid in bed and listened to it. And then the problem is that you try and get people all done by 11 o'clock, as it was obviously then. I know, looking at the clock, and it was 11:30, and there was still noise going on. So that obviously frightens us because you can't do it. However much you try to get people out, however much you organise it, you are still going to get that noise, car banging, people being excited. They've been to a wedding, they're happy. That is going to still cause a problem. We know that. We've already had it. All we're worried about is that's going to get worse. So I think that's already on people's minds is, what do I do?
Thank you, Mr. Moore.
Thank you.
That's grand. Thank you very much, Councillor Owen. Have you got any questions?
Just one really is for everyone. The communications, has anyone tried communicating with Mr. O'Leary on anything, on any of the issues that you have really? Because I always say communication is key.
Yes, please. I mean, the question is to you, Mr. Miles. Yes, yeah.
One of the problems is the communication. Is a lot of this, a lot of what's actually happened has been just villagers talking to each other. The only time that I picked it up is really from the parish council. It would have been great if Mr. O'Leary would have got everybody together and organised a meeting with the village and just explained on what he was going to do. And I think this is the problem, is this, as they call it, Chinese whispers, people talking to somebody and saying, this is going to happen, do you know this is going to happen? What, is this going to go on to 1 o'clock? Is this going to go on to later? Is this going to be... If he'd have done that, I think maybe we wouldn't even be in here. But there wasn't. There was no communication. I said I picked it up from the actual parish council and from people we met while walking the dog, which was just absolutely crazy. For something so important, there was no real communication.
Okay, Ms. Moll, your point is taken. Thank you very much indeed. And I notice we've got a hand. Is that a question, sir, or?
It's in response to the council's question.
Would you like to just reserve the answer to that for your when you get an opportunity to speak? Yeah, lovely. Okay, that's grand. Licensing officer, do you have any questions to the speaker? Excellent. Okay, is it a question?
Could I ask you? I went to the parish council meeting. Were you there? I went. You said that I've done this without meeting the village and so on. So I went through a total planning process. But for this application, I and my children went to the parish council meeting. Were you there?
I was there.
Okay. So.
Yep. Okay. Thanks. Point taken. Yeah. Understand your point. Right. Okay. If we can then move on to the next speaker, sir, please. If you could just reintroduce yourself, that'd be grand.
Yeah, okay, I'm Robert Keeble. I live opposite the Marquis.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, well, I've always been supportive of the concept of the venue. There's no doubt that Steve has used the best quality materials, and he's really changed the nature of the Marquis. I think that as a prestige hotel, restaurant, wedding location and health and well-being venue, providing employment to local people, then I'm very happy about all of that. What I'm not supportive of is the current application to serve alcohol to midnight 365 days a year, which if approved, I think would result in the licensing objectives not being met. I think that the whole problem is around the times, and just to be to sort of step back a moment, if the time was applied as 10:30 or 11 p.m., then we certainly wouldn't be sitting here. But that's not what the time is. It's 11:59, 23:59, and that's really, I think, the crux of the matter, because it means that people are not going to be dispersing or will have not fully dispersed until midnight. And I think when we look at that end of the day, we also have to look at the other end of the day. And living opposite the Marquis, there's clearly going to be an increase in all the deliveries that are required, and things like laundry and so on. And I'm concerned about the ability to manage those things, because I'm aware that these businesses, which are really very public-facing businesses, offering hotel services, breakfasts, the wellness centre and so on and so forth, then they're going to need early deliveries. Currently, I did write in my letter that deliveries began at 5:30. I thought I'd better confirm that, so I got up very early on Monday morning and the delivery started at 4:30. So if the licensing team here approves this licence, it means from 12:30 to 4:30 is a period of quiet. That's 4 hours. And I think that's just ridiculous. So I made a point. I said that I thought if it was approved, then they would be failing in terms of the 4 licensing objectives, and I'll explain that. So the 4 licensing criteria are increased crime and disorder. Well, obviously the potential for increased crime and disorder increases with the numbers of people and the lateness. I think especially the lateness, because if people have had 16 hours from 8 a.m. to midnight, then they're not going to be in a very fit state, are they? Obviously, we don't envisage that in actuality people are going to be drinking from 8 a.m. to midnight, but why is the application for 8 a.m. to midnight? People staying at the hotel can have alcohol served in their rooms 24 hours a day, and that's how it should be. That's great. But I can't understand why a wellness centre would need to start serving alcohol at 8 a.m. in the morning, for example. Compromised public safety. I think that public safety would be affected, and the reasons I think it would be affected are twofold. One would be the acute effects on neighbours of loss of sleep, which can cause increase in accidents in the home and accidents on the road, nothing to do with what they're going about doing their daily duties, but entirely to do with the timings. The longer term effects are clear, and they're more insidious, impacting memory, mood, concentration, immunity, and can cause risk of hypertension, anxiety, diabetes, depression, and myocardial infarction. And if people get less than 5 hours sleep a night regularly, there's a 15% increase in mortality. And I can give you the references for all that stuff if you want it. So I'm concerned about the times. It's not the licensing of the new premises that's fine. But it's the times. So you could argue, well, why don't you have blackout blinds, double glazing, and so on and so forth? But you'll find that most of the neighbouring properties, they have dogs, they have other animals, and of course in the summertime, you don't actually want all your windows shut, just so you can't hear noises and so on. Increase in public nuisance. Well, the Marquess's own application documentation for the planning permission in 2020 recognised the need for sensitivity to neighbouring residents by stating that noise should avoid giving rise to significant adverse impacts on health and quality of life. It went on to say that there was a need to identify and protect tranquil areas. This is in the Marquess's own document. Protect tranquil areas which have remained relatively undisturbed by noise and are prized for their recreational and amenity value for this reason. That's why I stated quite clearly in my letter that I believe the current licensing application, because of the times requested, may well be a disservice to the Marquess if approved, as guests may well find the peace and tranquillity of the Brett Valley site they sought has disappeared. Protection of children from harm is the fourth of the licensing objectives. And I don't know, I just think that when adults behave unreasonably, children are harmed. I believe the application encourages unreasonable behaviour because of that length of the licence applied for, and children associated with these adults may be harmed. I think actually we're beginning to see a backlash against an open all hours drinking culture. And I don't know if you saw the World Health Organization report that was reported in the Times yesterday. This country has the worst record of all the countries looked at by the World Health Organization in terms of children being exposed to alcohol. I think it was something like 57% of 11-year-olds or 13-year-old girls are exposed to alcohol because of people just having a glass of wine about them all day. This application, 8 a.m. to midnight, encourages that sort of a culture, and you could be on the leading edge of a turn against that culture. I think that, yeah, really all I'd say is that the venue, great. The way that it's been gone about in terms of the building and the gardens and all the rest of it, brilliant. It's a great amenity and so on. I think that it's simply the times of the licensing application that's been proposed. Okay? Thank you.
Mr. Keeble, thank you very much for your most fulsome presentation there. Okay, so again, do we have any questions of Mr. Keeble? Is there a question, Mr. O'Leary?
Yep.
In the last 7 years, Robert, have you had any occasion where you've needed to speak to me about unruly behaviour?
Right, okay. You say unruly behaviour. The answer to that is no. I've never spoken to you about unruly behaviour. But there is behaviour that causes noise. I did mention one of those examples in my letter, and yeah, there is noise associated with people, and that's fine.
Sorry, Mr. Keeble. Well,
Yeah.
Mr. O'Leary, I think if it's okay, I think Mr. Keeble has answered your question. I mean, the question was, has there been a complaint? The answer was no.
And my other question is, do you think I'm unapproachable?
Do I think you're unapproachable?
Yeah.
No, I have approached you on a number of occasions over the last few years.
And I'm content with that, Mr. Keeble, as
Yeah.
well. That's absolutely fine. You've answered the question. If that's
fine,
okay.
That's fine. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? I'm happy to answer it.
Yes, I was going to say, is there any other questions from any speakers at all? Anybody would like any clarification on anything? Councillors?
No, nothing there.
Okay. Licensing officer? Okay. Could I just ask of the licensing officer, just some clarification? There was mention made there about deliveries and things. Can we have a point of clarity on when those deliveries should be, or is that not anything that's mandated?
deliveries, there was, as I mentioned, about not taking out refuse, etc., between certain hours. That was a condition that the applicant put forward. But nothing about deliveries in there. Right.
So just to remind the members that you are enabled to add conditions. This may be something you might want to consider when you make your determination.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much indeed. That's useful. Thank you as well. Okay, so we've no further questions for you, Mr. Keeble. Thank you very much at this point. Mrs. Hogston. Good morning.
Good morning. I have to read, I'm afraid. I can't remember everything I've said in my head. Unfortunately, the email I sent on the 29th of March arrived too late to be included in my first response. Having been away for a few days, I didn't return until the 28th, and therefore wish to cover some of the points that you didn't get in my subsequent email. Therefore, as an extremely close neighbour, the suggested revised times to the Marquis's original licensing application between 800 and 23:30 hours Monday to Sunday makes little or no difference to the objections contained in my letter of the 24th of March and will certainly have an adverse effect on my lifestyle so far enjoyed and without doubt will have a detrimental effect on my general health. With regards to the sale of alcohol being served and sold inside and off of premises during the above hours, I have found no reference or indication as to whether an outside facility has been planned or envisaged for this eventuality, and the method by which outside guests and clients can pay. Is there a cut-off time for daily sales, outdoor sales of alcohol to be accepted? Regarding the above, I hope the citing of payments is not by their earlier method used in previous years, which I have explained, and I have also done a subsequent note on that to this. I can read now if you wish. Yes, okay, fine. The Marquis had a mobile bar to serve and sell alcohol to customers off premises. Unfortunately, this was located close to the boundary pheasants between our two properties, adjacent to my bedrooms. The loud clatter which naturally takes place when orders and payments are being made was very noisy, followed by clatter of cans being dropped into outside containers on the ground, as well as wine and glass bottles collecting, with the general closing down of the mobile bar, followed by general clearing up past closing times to the night being sleep night impossible to me. Regarding, I've just said that, sorry. I also feel that the supply of late night food refreshments should be rescheduled to commence maybe to 11:30, 11 o'clock, 2300 hours rather than 23:30 hours as requested. This will enable guests to leave on time at 23:59 without congestion, and may I add, indigestion. I'm sorry, I couldn't resist that little pun, sorry. It is obvious that doors and windows will be left open to allow the music being played, recorded or live, reaching their outdoor guest clients, also to me and my neighbours. I'm saddened by the knowledge of how relentless noise, music and the light pollution will have on our lovely local environment, coupled with the eventual loss of our local wildlife, which we all appreciate and have enjoyed so far today. And finally, will I be able to sit and enjoy the lovely garden I have? What would be the benefit of it to me when I believe I will probably have to go out to find some peace and quiet elsewhere? Sorry, a minute. I ask myself, will my family, their children and my great-grandchildren, come and visit me for any length of time other than for a quick visit once all 4 activities are up and running? I don't think so, as no one would get any sleep whatsoever, young or old, with alcohol being consumed and sold 16 hours a day, 7 days a week throughout the year, with no respite offered. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms Hodgson, as well. I understand how emotive these things can be. That's understood. That's okay, no problem. Does anybody have any questions for Mrs Hodgson at this time on the bench? No? Okay. Councillors, have you any questions?
Just one for clarity, perhaps for Mr DeLue, and one for Mrs Hodgson.
Yep, please, Councillor Jameson.
Firstly, it was mentioned about alcohol being sold outside. Is that something part of this, or is that something that's accepted, you know, as with before?
I believe that was probably under the regime of the previous licence, but I don't believe there's any anticipation that there will be an outside bar.
So firstly, that bar's gone anyway. It's been gone for the best part of a year and a half. And secondly, no. And if it was, it would be right over the other side of the new premises, because we built some cloisters, and it may well be that there's some kind of process going on there. But obviously, that will be dealt with at a different event.
Sorry, in the other one, in your original letter, you said you're okay with weddings.
Yes.
Is that still? You don't mind them being a bit later? Weddings?
The weddings, I said I think that they should go on till 1 o'clock at the time.
So you're okay with weddings being a bit later, but not.
But the other point there, may I make add, is that there won't only ever have weddings. There will be other venues. That venue will be used for rugby clubs, cricket clubs, other general club atmospheres or societies that would want to use it. So therefore, it will not only just be weddings, it will obviously, I can imagine, and has been in the past, for other societies to use it. So it will be more than maybe just on a Friday onto Saturday. It could be any day of the week other than those. And they may not be just breakfasters. They may start in the evening. They may have their weddings elsewhere. And are the actual weddings going to be performed on site? Because it would be a lovely, lovely venue with their proposed Italian garden. So there'll be a lot of activity going on and having photos taken, which would cause a lot of oohs and ahs. And I've been married before, so I know how it's like. And it's difficult for people to. And also, when they provide the extra meal of an evening, there's not enough time for them to digest it and say goodbye and collect their bits and pieces and go in half an hour, as is envisaged, for people to leave the premises. I find it difficult to understand. I mean, I've had a very good relation with Steve all these years, and we get on very well, and I like the man immensely, but this is my only chance, because at the moment I'm able to drive, and I'm 88 this week, and I don't suppose I'll have a license much longer, and I'll be stuck in my garden. I don't want to give it up. We came here, my husband and I, and we loved it, and he died very early. And I didn't want to live anywhere else. And I hope I could hand it over to my son, if he so wanted it. Okay.
Thanks a lot.
Any questions, Councillor? Yeah, yes, sir. Yes, thank you.
There was some comment made earlier about odours, and I think Steve made some comments about in 2020 introducing new kitchen extraction equipment.
Oh, yes, yes.
I'm aware that the people who have lodged that objection live a house further away from you,
Next
from the
door to me.
Marquis. They're next door to you, but one door further away from the Marquis. What's your experience of that, Peggy?
Well, I do get smellers, and they make my mouth water half the time. Sorry. It does get a bit, because if you've got windows open, it does permeate into your home. And if people have got great big doors that are open, then it is going to be. And if they don't like that kind of smell, I like spicy food, and I look at what I'm going to eat, and I think, I could have had some of that or something. But no, it does get a bit intense, and it's the bacon and the breakfasts that really make my mouth water.
Thank you very much, Ms. Oxon. Thank you for that. Is it a question?
I also get the smells.
Yes.
That's it.
Thank you very much.
That it went up into the air and was siphoned through
Understood.
The extractor on the roof.
Thank you, Mr. Hodgson. Thank you very much. Okay, any questions from our licence? Oh, well, sorry, Councillor Owen. Sorry, I do apologise.
Get forgotten about all the time, I do. Really I'd like to get your questions answered, really, because you said about other events. What sort of other events would there be, except for weddings? Because all we've heard about is weddings. Could you... all right.
So obviously, we've spent a massive amount of money, and we will be having other events. But actually, if we'd have stayed as we were, those events would have been next to Peggy's garden. Those events are now going to be however far away it is into the building, which is soundproofed and light-proofed. The Italian garden, which Peggy spoke about, is just, the hedging is going to be planted as soon as it stops raining and we can actually get onto the ground. That is 4 metres high. We cannot and could not have weddings without having the gardens finished. So those hedges are going to be, so when those people are in the Italian garden, which is probably 2 acres across, something like that, and then anybody that's outside in that facility when Peggy's in a garden is going to be inside another enclosed area of 4 metre high hedging.
I'm just reminded that these are questions to the members, but I mean, if it's a quick point of clarification, I will allow it. Councillor Owen.
No, you're right.
You sure?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. In which case,
Chair, there will be an opportunity for
yes,
members to ask questions
exactly.
when we sum up.
Yeah. That's all right. It's okay. Okay. Excellent. Right. Okay. In which case, then, I'll thank you once more, Ms. Hodgson. Thank you for your representation, and we'll move on, sir, please.
Okay, just to repeat, my name's Mark Stevens. I live at Holly Lodge opposite the Marquis. My wife, Beverly, is with me today. Thanks for the opportunity to present to yourselves. Our objection is primarily on the basis of prevention of public nuisance, and specifically noise, and perhaps even more specifically late night noise. This is a rural location. It's a residential location, maybe different to many the wedding venues in the area. But as I say, our objection is specifically around noise. Just to preempt any possible questions, I think the issue is in terms of the expansion of the activities. Up till now, obviously the Marquis has functioned well and it's been a good addition to the village. So we're not really talking about what's gone before, but I guess this application is all about what's coming. So it's the expansion of the number of events and the number of people that give rise for concern. The potential for noise nuisance was obviously recognised in the planning application. And I do recognise that this is a separate process from the planning application. But the Sharps-Breadmore report that was included in the planning application has been referenced by Mr O'Leary in respect of this application, so I think it is relevant to talk about that Sharps-Breadmore report. So on the planning application, it was granted. Water under the bridge, we are where we are. It was conditional, and one of those conditions was that a noise management plan in accordance with the recommendations of that noise report would be put in place before beneficial use commenced. As I say, just to repeat, I do understand the separate nature of the licensing application, but the Sharps-Breadmore report is also referred to, I think, in the conditions proposed by the applicant in respect of this planning application, this licensing application, so I think it is relevant. Two specific recommendations that were made in that report were that music would cease by 23:30. We've been humming and ahhing backwards and forwards 23:59. It specifically says 23:30 in that report that's been referred to. And the other thing it refers to is that non-residents should leave site by midnight. Mr O'Leary, best estimate is half an hour to get people corralled and out. So again, 23:30 would appear to be the appropriate point at which to stop refreshment and alcohol sales. If that condition of leaving by site by midnight is to be achieved. So, in essence, this application is not consistent with neither planning nor the Sharps-Breadmore report, and it's on that basis, really, that we respectfully ask that the condition that the licence application as presented is not approved. In fact, if you refer to section 311 of the key information that was sent out with the documents that we've had today, or looking at today, it's clearly stated that if licensing hours are different to the planning permission, then the applicant must observe the earlier time. So it seems to me a bit, in the light of that, a bit perverse to apply for a licence application that inevitably, if fully adhered to and carry on till 23:59, is going to lead to planning breach. So it seems to say a bit perverse to make that application. It would seem equally perverse to me if it were granted. So basically, as I say, we respectfully ask that the application, as has been made in respect to those hours, is declined. Just to highlight a few other things, again related to the conditions from the Sharps-Breadmore report and also a planning application. It says that the noise management plan needs to be approved before beneficial use commences. I don't know who approves that plan. I'd be interested to know if it's a public document, and like to know that we can see that plan before beneficial use commences. Because an important point of that part of that has already been referred to in respect of managing departures. There's no doubt about it that even though the volume and number of people up till now has been relatively low, we certainly hear people leaving late at night, particularly in the summer with the windows open. So it'd be good to know how that's going to be managed and how that's been is part of the plan. The last thing was, and it's actually alarmed me a little, I think the planning application was definitely on the basis of wedding use as a wedding venue. As far as I'm aware, planning application made no mention or no reference to using it for other events. And indeed, some of the supporting documents, for example, in respect of transport management, made reference to 30 events a year. So if we're talking about a lot of extra events, then I would suggest that the planning application needs to be either revisited or certainly reviewed, because that 30 events per year was used as a basis. I appreciate that it's got to be Monday to Sunday, 365 days of the year, because you don't know when the weddings will be. But again, I think in terms of that noise management plan, there needs to be some means of referring to the total number of events and the sort of frequency of disturbance, not just the absolute level of disturbance during a particular event, but the number of events that take place as well. That's it. Thank you.
That's excellent. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Stevens. I'm probably minded just to ask our legal advisor, because of course you recognise it yourself, but you've mentioned a number of planning items there, and of course this subcommittee cannot concern itself with planning items. It's licensed. We are purely concerned with the with the licensing objectives here, and I absolutely take your point. It's something that comes up on a regular basis. But I think the obvious statement is that those planning considerations are concerns for Mr. O'Leary, and if he's
in terms of effective use, surely it makes sense to look at the two things together.
Well,
I would have thought.
I think your comments were that you would consider it perverse. I don't disagree with that,
Yeah.
but we are bound by what we can do here.
No, I
just wonder
understand
if I
that.
can just get some clarification.
But I'm assuming that was a question to me, but the Sharps Redmore report is also referred to in respect of this particular licence application.
Yes,
So I think that needs to be, as that's been referred to as one of the conditions that's proposed,
Okay.
that needs to be respected.
Okay, and I take your points on board. I don't think there's anything you need to add on.
Not really, Chair. Only that there are two different regimes but they are linked intrinsically. That they have to be linked, and there is guidance coming from government that we need to sort of cross over to a certain extent. But as it stands at the moment, we are limited to considering the licensing objectives. Now, you're quite right. You can mention that report. That is in one of the conditions, and that's there, and that will be part of the consideration as one of the offered conditions that the members will consider when they make their deliberations.
Excellent. Okay.
I think that's a question. As a taxpayer, like it to be the case that you take these things into account to make the whole thing more effective. But yeah, that's a bigger question.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Stevens. So coming back to questions, does anybody have any questions for Mr. Stevens directly at all? Okay, councillors, any questions for Mr. Stevens?
Not for Mr. Stevens, but just clarity on this planning thing, perhaps.
Go ahead, please, councillor.
So, I mean, as you say, I understand that we are not tied by it at all. So if we agree this licence application and it goes against the planning application, does Mr. O'Leary have to go back to planning again?
If you're talking specifically about the time permitted for the music, I don't think it would be in contravention of what the planning permission says in that. If planning permission was till, say, 11:30, but you, considering the licensing objectives, granted a licence until midnight, obviously they could operate under the licensing regime, but they would fall foul of the planning regime, and they would leave themselves open to enforcement action from the planning authority. So basically, when you have two sets, you've got to apply with the most stringent one to stay within the law.
Lee, sorry, could I just ask, I pressed my button, so could I just ask you a question? You actually got a copy of our planning permission that states those hours, just so that you can be...
Yes, I have a copy of those,
okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, we do. And what I don't want to do is to get bogged down in planning matters here, because we're a licensing hearing, not a planning hearing, so I've got to be quite firm about that, Mr. Stevens.
So in the context of the licensing application, it refers to the Sharps report, noise management plan based on that, and that refers to music stopping at 23:30, residents leaving site by midnight, with the half hour that Mr. O'Leary has talked about. That's 23:30.
Yes.
Irrespective of planning permissions.
Well, I think your point has been made, and your point will be taken into account by the subcommittee in its deliberations. So, any specific questions for Mr. Stevens at this stage? Please.
In your statement there, do you think that the Sharps Redmore report has been used as part of the application for the licence?
It's referred to in the supporting documentation as one of the conditions proposed by the applicant.
And that is part of the licensing application?
Shaking head over there, I'm reading it in front of me.
We're going to stay with the licensing issue, not the planning issue, for this.
It's been used as part of the licensing application.
And that point has been made, so,
okay.
That's well understood.
Oh, okay.
All right?
Okay, yes, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I think we've established then no further questions. No further questions from the licensing officer? No? Okay. So do we have anybody else that wishes to speak at all? I think everybody has made their representations, haven't they? Yep. Wonderful. Thank you very much. In which case, we will now move to the closing submissions. And I'm going to ask the licensing officer if they wish to give a closing statement or to summarise any points which need clarity at this point. Kerry?
No, Chair.
No?
Thank you.
Okay, in which case then I'm going to ask the applicant, Mr O'Leary, to give a closing statement, please.
I think I and my staff have shown our responsibility and our courtesies to our neighbours, and I think by the very nature of some of the conversations that you've seen today, we're not here to make people's lives worse. We have spent a considerable amount of money on this project to make sure that we mitigate circumstances. I think we've operated with a licence for 7 years. We've never had a complaint. We've never had a visitation from the police. We've managed everybody out of the building, including on nights where we've had in excess of 170 people. We haven't had a traffic issue. We haven't had any disputes with our neighbours outside of smells from the kitchen, as far as I'm aware. So I think that I and my staff have proved that this is not just about us making money. It's about running a business, employing people, and bringing the community along with us. And the designs of the building have been done with the KLH and to sympathise with all the people around us. So I'm not about to change my personality and just discard everybody's opinion. We want these people to come along with us. They're acquaintances of mine, and we will do everything in our power to make sure that we continue to be a part of the community that we're in. And I expect that the people around us and to use our facility and hopefully to have their weddings and so on and so forth. We have in the next 6 weeks a mass amount of work to do in the gardens, which I think will actually make people feel a lot better, because everything we're doing is to try and keep our weddings and our functions within our site. And I sincerely feel that that what we're doing now, including, by the way, deliveries coming through into the new car park and not being out on the high street. We have all our bins are going to be moved so that they're within the car parks and not next door to Peggy. The facility that we had outside was to me was inappropriate, but it was needed because of the amount of people that we would have to use to carry drinks in and out of the building. We've changed that process. So everything that we try and do is to bring the community along with us, and that will continue. I don't wish to fall out with people, and I think by the very nature of this meeting and the way that people are talking to each other, you can see that we're just not unreasonable people that just want to open up and make a profit. And I must reiterate, we're not with the spoons. We're not here to sell alcohol to people with no respect for the people around us. And we will control as much as we can. And if we have issues, we'll deal with them. At the moment, I haven't got any issues. I haven't got an issue with noise specifically. I haven't got a nuisance issue. We haven't had one, and I don't expect to have one, and I certainly don't want to have to deal with one. Thank you very much.
Mr O'Leary, thank you very much indeed for your closing submission. Okay, so we have, the time is now 11:45, so we've been going for an hour and 3/4 now, so I am satisfied that we've all had ample opportunity to state our cases. And so I'm going to move to item number 6, which is exclusion of the public. And I must put forward the following motion, for which I'll require a seconder from a member, please. On the basis that the subcommittee considers that the public interest in excluding the public outweighs the public interest in its deliberation being held in public, it is resolved that under Section 100A(4) of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting on the grounds that it involves the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in Part 1 of Schedule 12 of the Act on the grounds set out in Regulation 14.2 of the Licensing Act 2003, Hearings Regulations 2005. And I require a seconder to that motion, please. Thank you, Councillor Jameson, and are we all in agreement with that? Yep, excellent. Okay, in which case, Beth, I'll ask Super job. Thank you very much indeed, everybody, for your forbearance. The committee members or subcommittee members have gone through their deliberations and taken everything into consideration. I'm now going to ask our licensing officer, Mr. DeLu, to put our decision to you along with our reasons for that. Thank you, Mr. DeLu.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for everyone attending today. The subcommittee have considered this very carefully. Having considered the application, listened to the applicant and to all those making representations, firstly I'd just like to say that they're satisfied that the licensing objectives of the prevention of crime, public safety and the protection of children from harm are not engaged in this matter. They feel that those licensing objectives are not affected. So therefore they've concentrated on the licensing objective of the prevention of public nuisance. Again, it was quite clear to the subcommittee that the main issue is the issue of noise emanating from the premises. And having heard everything that has been said today, they're quite satisfied that the building itself and the conditions that have been applied, particularly those agreed with the environmental services, are sufficient to mitigate any noise disturbance coming from within the building. They do have concerns as to the external noise that is potential and have addressed those issues. Firstly, with regard to the outside areas and people drinking, they've imposed a condition that the outside areas shall not be used for drinking after 11 p.m. each night. With regards to other noise, the subcommittee are satisfied that the condition requiring management by staff or people arriving and dispersing from the premises to make sure that they prevent any disturbance to nearby residential properties is sufficient, and that public nuisance should be prevented by the application of that condition. There was concern regarding deliveries, as mentioned by one of the respondents here today, that deliveries did occur in the early hours, so the members have decided to impose a condition that no deliveries shall take place at the premises between 8 p.m. and 6 a.m. They also considered the issue of smells emanating from the premises, but feel that there is sufficient evidence to show that there is an adverse impact on the licensing objective in that respect. So the decision of the subcommittee is to grant the application in accordance with the conditions contained in the operating schedule, with the additional conditions agreed with the environmental service and with the additional conditions agreed with the police, together with the two additional conditions imposed by the subcommittee today. There is a right of appeal against the decision or any condition imposed, and the right of appeal should be made to the Magistrates' Court within 21 days of receiving written notification of this decision. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. DeLu. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, with the decision having been issued and explained, there is no further opportunity for any questions or anything at this stage. So I will draw the meeting to a close. I'll thank you all very much for your attendance and for your submissions. I'll just highlight communication, always the key.